How can he say that? It was just what they were not accustomed to. And so that brings us to the second reason why people were so drawn to him. And that is because he taught with authority. And it was obvious to the synagogue that day when Jesus and Peter walked in, that we referenced in our scripture this morning, that Jesus was a teacher of a totally different order, because he didn't quote all those authorities of the past. He was the authority himself. And that was their first clue that something new was happening. But then something happened right there in the middle of the service, in their midst, that really rocked them back on their heels. He backed up his words with actions. And this could have been, we don't know, Jesus' very first visit to the synagogue. But in the middle of his sermon, and I don't know what they called it back then, a sermon, a message, a homily, a talk, I don't know. In the middle of what he had to say to them, a man with an evil spirit interrupted him. And Jesus demonstrated, didn't talk about it, he demonstrated the authority of his teaching with his power over that spirit. Now let's take a look and see exactly what happened. First thing that we need to notice is that the man did not come bursting in the back door of the synagogue and totally disrupt the service. He didn't do that. Mark tells us that this was a man who was in the synagogue, probably a very respected layperson and a productive member of the whole group of people. And why do we think that? Because the leaders of the synagogue would not have allowed anybody else in. You were all going to be somewhat alike. And the second thing we need to look at is that this man's affliction is only identified as an evil spirit. The demon is not tied to any particular sickness. So our question is, what then was this demon doing to this man? Well, we can't say for sure, but scholars, there's pretty much of a consensus, agree that the demon's influence in this gentleman was probably of a moral nature. And I don't know. Nobody knows what moral issue the man had, but it was tearing him up. You can decide for your own self. What was the issue that this demon was? And pick one. You know, was it a demon of hate? Was it a demon of revenge? Was it a demon of illicit sex or unbridled lust for power? Was it greed? Was it ambition? Was it fear? Was it guilt? Was it envy? Was it jealousy? Or perhaps it was a demon of negativism, of deceit, and gossip. Which one? Doesn't make any difference. Makes no difference. Because these demons that we read about in Mark, have they all gone away? These demons are right here in the real world that we live in. I've seen the results. So have you. We all have. A third thing to notice is that this man had given authority to that demon. He was demon what? Possessed. Now, laughingly, I'm not going to say how many years, a long time, I have said that at least 2 of my children are demon possessed. And I suspect those of you that are parents have questioned. Maybe. You know, the demon had gained control, and the man had lost control. And Paul reminds us, and I said this Wednesday night, it's funny how it popped up Wednesday, it pops up today, reminds us that the chief demon himself, Satan, is like a roaring lion. And he's roaming all over the place, seeking whom he may devour. Now that is biblical language, if ever it was. Friends, it's also today's truth. You can call it archaic language, but the demons are there but Satan's behind it. And there are all sorts of authorities and there are all sorts of teachings that the world gives us today that we can use to try and overpower these demons. We turn to so many things, to education, to sociology, to history, to philosophy, to science, to psychology. Oh my goodness, sometimes we even turn to religion. Yet all of these things only have a certain kind of power, but they don't have the power that Jesus has. Other teachings have authority, but they don't have the authority of Jesus' new teaching. What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? That's what the evil spirit asked. And then his next sentence was, I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Jesus never had even addressed the demon at that point. This was volition. The demon throws it out before Jesus said anything to him. He acknowledges quite clearly that there was one with greater authority that had just arrived. And then Jesus speaks. Jesus speaks sternly, but Jesus speaks gently too. And he says, be quiet. Be still. My grandmother, 65 years ago, when I would get rowdy, she would look at me and she would hold up that finger and she would say, be hushing. And there were a lot of things she could say to me and I'd let it go over my head. But when Gran said, be hushing, I knew it was time to hush, to be quiet, to calm down. So Jesus said, be quiet, come out of him. And the authority showed. Because the evil spirit shook that man. He shook that man violently. And the evil spirit came out with a shriek. Now, there's one last thing. The people were amazed. This was something new. Something astonishing had just happened. And the authority of God, who had been in the past, now was occurring right in front of their eyes. It was like they were standing there watching Moses part the Red Sea. It's like they were standing there watching the walls of Jericho fall down. The power of God wasn't in the scrolls of Torah. The power of God was there in front of them. And they could see it. And their words, what is this? A new teaching. And with authority, he even gives orders to evil spirits and they obey him. How can he say these things? Education does a lot. Education makes most of us intelligent. Okay? Sociology gives us cultural knowledge. History gives us world knowledge. Philosophy gives us conceptual knowledge. Science gives us knowledge of the natural laws. Psychology offers to us behavioral knowledge. And religion, what does religion impart to us? Religion gives us divine knowledge. But there's a difference in knowledge and in belief. There's a difference in knowing of and knowing personally. And in the end, all of these things don't have the authority to control the demons that plagued the world back then and the world today. We still need something more, just as that man did in the synagogue. We need a new teaching. We need that one who has authority. So, this is what I've learned from studying this week. And I think sometimes you all can tell when I've gotten into a sermon and studying, and sometimes you can tell when I haven't. I got into this week. I enjoyed it. And I see my life, and I think possibly you see your life and have learned these things, these intellectual self-disciplines can offer us self-knowledge. They can help us see ourselves more clearly. And they are important. They're important for that reason. But the more clearly I see myself, and I suspect with you too, the more clearly you see yourselves, the more we realize that we need something besides what we can do on our own. We realize that we have the need for salvation. We realize we have the need for that authority that we cannot produce on our own. You know, we need the power that only God offers through His Son, Jesus Christ, that will deliver us. We don't simply need to be healed. We need to be saved. We need to be delivered from the demons of our world that sneak into our lives. Oh, they're so stealthy. And do their best to destroy us. Friends, we gather here every Sunday because we know Jesus brings that new kind of teaching. He brings a new authority into this world that will save, that will make us whole, and that will overcome the demons that we have in our lives. Did he really say that? What is this? The people asked with amazement. A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. And at once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. And that fame, and that power, and that forgiveness, and that love have spread for over 2,000 years. They've spread right in that front door. They've spread right in here to each one of us. All we have to do is like what we sang. Bow and say, you are Lord. He's there wanting to claim our demons. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.